When it comes to Excel macros and VBA, I'm all about flexibility and reusability. Don't reinvent the wheel every time you need to accomplish something, right? If you've already done it, just reuse that. And that's really what I want to discuss here during this lecture. I want to take a portion of our code, a portion of this procedure that we created called import text file, and I want to break it out of this procedure. I want to remove it from here, create a new procedure, tell it to do this work, right, whatever it is that we're about to accomplish here, and then make a call to it back into this procedure. This technique will allow us to take that one portion of code that we remove from here and reuse it in multiple scenarios. Imagine this. We've got this line of code back inside of our import text file procedure that does a variable called open files, and it makes it equal to the results of the application get open file name method. This is the one that opens up the prompt, the open window, where users get to pick the files. Well, that's something that I'm perhaps going to use not just in this one procedure, but perhaps in multiple procedures. Because you know what? Every time I prompt the user to open up a file, it may not be for copying and pasting the data. It might be for, hey, I want you to open up this file that we're going to turn into a pivot table. I want to open up this file that we're going to turn into a chart or multiple charts, whatever it is. So this one line of code, I want to be able to use over and over and over again. Okay? So I'm going to grab this line of code right here. I'm just going to grab it and I'm going to copy it. Control C. Because I'm about to move it to another procedure. So now I'm going to create the procedure. But you know what? It's not going to be a sub procedure. Sub procedures, all they do, they're really good at it, but all they do is run code. They just run steps, run a procedure, right? Do A, B, and C, and D, and that's it. That's all you're going to do. We need a procedure that's going to do A, B, and C, or one thing like us. We're going to open up the browse window, do something, and do it really good. But then once you do it, I want you to get the value and return it back to us. Think about the sum procedure for a moment. The most common procedure inside of Excel. You use the sum function to sum up a range of cells. But is that range of cells always the same? No, you can use the sum function in just about any scenario all over the place. That's what we're doing here. We're going to create a function procedure that does one thing, opens up the browse window, allows users to grab a file or multiple files, but then I now need to find out what files the user chose. So a function will tell a user what to do or run a line of code and then grab a value that we can then use. So let's create the function procedure. So I'm going to go up to insert. I'm going to insert a procedure. This time I'm going to insert a function procedure. And let's call this get files. There we have it, get files. And I'll hit OK. It's still public. That's great. I'm going to hit OK. All right, and I've got the beginnings of this new procedure down here at the bottom called get files. Let's just move that up on our screen there. There we have it. All right, and I remember I said it's going to do one thing really well. And what was it going to do? It was going to activate the application. And let me paste this line in here that I copied earlier, Control V. It's going to use the application get open file name method and prompt the user to select a file or multiple files. Now I need to do a little bit more here. Remember, a function does something, single line of code or multiple lines of code, but it returns a value back to you. So I'm not going to fill up open files with this. I'm going to tell it that get files, the name of our procedure that we just created, is going to be equal to the results of the get open file name method. So now get files, the function, returns or is now equal to the results, the files that the user chose. Now I'm going to add one more thing here. This function is going to be of type variant. So that's much like the function that we created earlier, or the variable that we created earlier. Let me scroll up here. This guy right here, open files, is a variant, right? But here, get files is going to be of type variant because it's grabbing some files, right? Whatever types of files they are, text files or Excel files or whatever they are, whatever we're prompting the user to grab. All right, so now we've split out a portion of the code. This function does one thing, does it really well. It gets the results of the get open file name method. Now, let's get back up here. So we no longer need this because our function's doing it. Let's get rid of that. Delete. So now what's open files going to be equal to? It's going to be equal to the function that we just created called get files. There we have it. Open files is now equal to get files. So when it runs get files, it actually comes down here, runs it here. So now we have this one portion of code broken out. And we could reuse the function get files multiple times in multiple different procedures, trying to make something more dynamic, more reusable, right? Don't reinvent the wheel. Create it once, use that in multiple procedures. Let's try it out. Let's see it in action. So it really shouldn't be any different than before, but we've broken it up in our code so that we can reuse it. Let's just delete some of these sheets out of here so I don't run into any naming convention problems. Let's delete those. And let's see, what else do we got here? We got a few more. I'm just going to delete all these extra ones just because I don't want to run into a problem. All right, I'm going to run my procedure, view, macros. We'll view the macros. And let's see, I'm going to grab my import text file. We'll run that. Now, this window, it's not being called from within, right? That macro I just ran. This is being called from the function that we just created. So I'll grab a couple of them here. There's April and December. I'll hit open and give it a moment, and I'm done. There's December and April. Breaking your code up, making it more reusable, right? That's the name of the game here. Automation, but reusability. You never want to rewrite a bunch of code that you've already written before. So create the function, use that again and again. That's simple. Try this out. Get into your Visual Basic window, Alt F11, create the function, and it's going to do the one thing, do it really well, and then you'll just make a call to it. Here, open files is now equal to this function called get files. So try that out. Make your code as reusable as possible.